Hello. So in this video, we're going to be going over how to properly 3 and 4 bet ISO weak players. Um, it's an increasingly important topic because in today's games, there's not as many weak players. They're becoming, more and more rare. So you want to make sure that you are getting into as many pots as possible against these weak players, even if it means you have to be 3 and 4 betting. But ideally, you want to be doing this in position, get into as many re-raised pots as possible, so you can outplay these guys post flop. Because typically in 3 and 4 bet pots, these guys are going to make the biggest mistakes. And you can also use it to a huge advantage when you do have big hands, but we're going to be focusing on when we don't have much of a hand and kind of what we're doing to initially set up the play so we can make sure that we are getting heads up against these players. So we're going to go over a couple hands. In this very first hand, we have a 9-6 suited. This is in a 50 NL 6 max cash game. We go ahead and open raise, adjusting our hand range for our target who is in the big blind here. Ideally, of course, we'd rather be in the cutoff or button, but in this case, these players aren't getting terribly out of line, and we're really widening our range so we can get a call from the weak player out of the blinds who's calling a lot of hands and can play this pot um, heads up, in a single raised pot. But in this case, we get calls from the button and the small blind, which foil our plan a little bit. But then we get a small 3-bet from our target weak player here out of the big blind. Um, the first mistake a lot of players might make is go ahead and just call this bet, and then you're going to see this flop, four, you know, four players to the flop in a fairly sandwiched position, which is not what you want to do. So the best play here really is to make a small 4-bet. Don't even need to do too much to let the regs know that this is potentially going to be a much bigger pot, since now there's still someone who has action open. So, and also by 4-betting small, you can get away from your hand if the button, who's really the only player we're super worried about in this hand, actually flatted with a big hand. So we get both these guys to fold. Our big blind target player calls, which is a great sign because then we know his hand is fairly weak like we suspect. And in this case, the flop comes 8-8-4. He checks to us. We make a standard continuation bet and get them to fold in. We're doing that because this is obviously going to be a huge amount of time, like ace X, ace Jack, plus not going to be too many pocket pairs, especially big pairs, because we probably would see a 5-bet out of our weak player who's, you can tell he's weak to begin with because he's making a small 3-bet multi-way. And in this case, I'll bring this up if I can. He actually had ace Jack. Yeah. So um, get them to fold with a decent amount of equity against our range and win a pot that we should otherwise probably not win. So, the main point is that you are finding um, as minimal risk as you can to get the pot um, heads up against the weak player. I mean, obviously you want to keep your SPR as large as possible because that's going to allow you to outplay them the most. But if you have to put a little bit more in, you're going to find pretty good success if you're targeting the players properly. All right, so in the second hand, um, same player, same table, same session. Um, this time the player is under the gun. We're in the cutoff. Um, the weak target player opens under the gun. And we have 10-8 of diamonds, and we make a smaller sized 3-bet in position. Again, we're looking to ISO this player. have position on them in a re-raised pot. Flop comes 6-4-7. So here we essentially have double gutter and backdoor diamond draws. Um, Opponent checks. Not bad play here to go ahead and bet, but ideally, if they do have a hand, um, we don't want to get blown off our hand because we have a hand that has a decent amount of potential where we're a little bit deeper this time. Um, so, peeling off one card and seeing how our opponent reacts on the turn. If they check again on the turn, then we're firing pretty much any card. Um, so we check. Ace of diamonds comes out, so now we pick up a diamond draw. Our opponent checks again. So now, of course, we're going to go ahead and bet. We don't have to bet that much. 5 into 8 3/4. Our opponent calls, though. Um, Fortunately, we hit our diamonds, so now we could pretty much, narrow down that our opponent is probably going to have some kind of ace-x hand here most of the time, almost always. Um, and, no sets, probably not any other big pairs like kings, queens, and jacks. I mean, predominant part of their range is going to be essentially ace-x. So get a check, and here we can bet near almost pot size, um, about 4/5 or so of the pot, and get our opponent to look us up. And in this case, they had, I believe, ace 10. Yeah. So here's the hand again. Uh, Call, hit our hand, and get paid off. So again, this happens because, we're targeting the proper player. We are three betting or four betting, not very much, as minimal as we can to get away with it to get the pot heads up. Because again, we do want as big a SPR, stack to pot ratio as we can have, but you know, shortening it a little bit in order to make sure that we are heads up and not multi-way against the weak players, or we're getting three bet ourselves. We flat there, we might get blown off the hand by another regular. So all those things are important to make sure that you are getting into that pot against that player heads up.